Hi, so I'm going to be interviewing Alexa, who's a junior, and she worked at Project Rousseau. So, Alexa, thank you for participating. Um, can you, so what is Project Rousseau and what was your role this summer in it?
Yeah, so Project Rousseau is an education nonprofit organization based out of New York, and they really focus on working with immigrant communities, refugee communities a tiny bit, and also work. They've expanded to work with Native communities on reservations as well. So, though they're based in New York, they have like partnerships in the UK on reservations and all of that. So, you end up working with a lot of people. And then I specifically was an SSAT curriculum design intern, big title. But it was basically, I was in charge of working on a syllabus with a partnering intern. And so I specifically worked on the writing and reading sections of the SSAT. And then my partner worked on the math sections. And it was a really great experience as well. It was supplemented by working on like things that just came up. Since it is a small organization, you work with everyone. So I was working with the founder every once in a while, and I was working with like my supervisor every once in a while. And sometimes it would just be like a week where I was kind of doing my own work that was previously scheduled in. And I also tutored one-on-one for students. So that like that caseload kind of varies by intern, but I had two, and so two of them were working on the task, which is like the GED equivalent in New York, and then the other two were working on the SSAT. So it was a really great way to kind of not only just be on the computer and working on a syllabus and not having that face-to-face contact, but also kind of being balanced and having that student contact, even if it wasn't a totally forward-facing job at all times.
So that's really cool that you got to do both the tutoring and the syllabus. Um, I'm just curious, the syllabus that you were designing, in what way was it special or different than something else? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the big thing with the SSAT is that there are not a lot of resources online. And so it's very hard for low income communities and specifically students who are interested in getting into private or more elite private schools. And so they really focus on making sure that these questions and like all these like study kind of supplemental material are all available to them. And so it was really geared towards students who they work with, who Project Rousseau works with. So rather than kind of make it for like the average student, taking into account that these students might be perhaps a grade behind or might, not have the typical resources. Working with the students on the reservation, they don't always have access to Wi-Fi, or they don't have access to a computer. And so keeping those things into account and making sure that the syllabus kind of reflected those specific needs of the populations that we work with, I think was a really big component. And so making sure, I know like my partnering intern that I worked with, she specifically had to like break down all of the math sections. And so making sure that even if you think like this is so-and-so's grade level, making sure that you're going back and just double checking for understanding and stuff like that. And then very similarly with some of the concepts that I was working with, just making sure that you're meeting students where they are. And so that was really a great experience because I got to work with SSAT students who are
Mhm.
currently studying for it. And so I got to really feel where they were at, and I could kind of
Yeah.
reflect that in the syllabus.
Yeah. So like the tutoring, I don't know, keeps you on ground and makes sure that the
Yes.
syllabus design is something that
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
important, like meaningful for the students. That's really cool. Okay.
for sure.
Um, what did you like about the program the most?
Oh, I liked a lot of things. So it was this past summer, and so as we all know, most everything was remote. And so I think I was really nervous about approaching an internship, like a formal internship for the first time, with a community that I wasn't experienced with, and then also being 3 hours behind in California. I think it had a potential to be really, really hard to adjust, but they made it very seamless. We had training and we had like really comprehensive like spreadsheets to know what you're doing. We had weekly meetings with the entire team. So talking like literally chief of staff, founder, everyone is involved on a day-to-day basis, and so that's a really nice aspect. And I think it made it feel sorry for like a community,
Mhm.
whereas I think on Zoom it's very easy to lose that. And so we had a lot of those check-ins. We also had a very large intern program or cohort, and so we all had a book club. And so this book club kind of reflected like what we're kind of doing in Project Rousseau, as well as some supplemental meetings that we could go to. For instance, like the chief of staff had experience in a master's of public affairs. And so if you wanted to learn a little bit more about that, you were welcome to reach out or have a formal, can't remember exactly what the meetings were called, but they were open to anyone. And I learned a lot about not only like grad opportunities, but thinking about whether I really want to work at a small nonprofit, a bigger nonprofit. And I think a really big part of it was that I reflected, and they encourage you to reflect on whether this is work that you would like to do in the future, whether this is work for you. If it's taxing and not something that you want to do, then you've had the experience and it has taught you to perhaps move on to something else, or it's something that really calls you.
Mhm.
So I think it was a really great growing experience that involved a lot of community based activities, and you got to know a lot of the students as well. So not only was I able to meet a lot of people, I was able to understand a lot more of the like inner workings of a smaller nonprofit.
Yeah. So that's really cool how the organization, besides your work as an intern, there's also these opportunities for community building, opportunities for learning. Um, I find that very, I don't know, I guess very attractive.
Yeah,
I guess,
it was.
yeah, the last question, sorry, the last question is, yeah, so how can Brown, or how did you apply and how do you think other Brown students can apply as well?
Yeah, sure. So I know we ended up discussing this, and so they do Project Rousseau as an organization typically will kind of be involved with like I guess like the career lab equivalent of different schools, and so Brown has the career lab, of course. And so I specifically found the internship on Brown Connect, sorry. And it was partnered with the Sprint Awards. So I kind of
Mhm.
applied through the Sprint Award, and then they had a kind of a list of different intern positions. And so there was one position that had to do more with like working with donors and working with other kind of like I believe they had like a food drive and things related to perhaps more like the pandemic and stuff like that. But anyways, so they had a list of postings. I just sent a cover letter and a resume. It was very straightforward. They got back to me very soon, and then I had a small interview with who would be my supervisor, and we had a really great discussion about education related things. And it is really an informal approach to
Mm,
how they want to recruit people, and I think that really reflected like how we all got along as an intern cohort.
mm.
And so yeah, so just Brown Connect, Sprint Award, and yeah.
Cool. And of course, you did it remote through Zoom, but we will see what happens for the viewers of this video. um,
Yes. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention.
yeah.
They also have fall and spring fellowships. So it's not just a summer opportunity. They have, of course, a lot more opportunities over the summer, but I know they have a current fall fellow, and I think they might have more than one spring fellow as well. So it's an ongoing search for new interns, new students. They like having that, I think, student aspect to work with younger students.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Alexa. And yeah, we hope some people will be interested in Project Rousseau. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.